What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the latest edition of the Sarlacc Digest. This is your host, Kris, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Scott. You would think it was a regular Hoth Topic episode, but it's not, because guess who else is here? I'm trying to be calm. I'm trying to be cool. But right here, we have Claudia Gray, New York Times current best-selling author. Hello, Claudia.
Hello. Hi there.
Wow.
I can't.
So
Okay.
excited to have you on.
Yeah, you got. Go ahead.
Good to be here.
Yay. Okay. I'm going to tell you right now, you got a couple nerds. You probably deal with a whole lot of nerds all the time, but we love the books. We love reading and we love everything about Star Wars and everybody. And you, I'm telling you right now, at this point, right, you must be one of the most, I'd say respected, loved your stories. Every single book you've put out so far, I have not had a thing negative to say about them. And I'm pretty good about being negative about books. So I want to thank you for that. And I'm telling you, Master and Apprentice is probably my favorite book in canon.
Wow.
So it's amazing. I've listened to that book because I do mostly audio and driving, probably 8 times.
Wow.
And I could probably read it to you. But I like Mark doing it for me, so it's good. Right on. So I'm gonna tell you, and most of the fans, all of your stuff is well received, from Lost Stars to Leia to Bloodline, to Master and Apprentice, and now to Into the Dark. So everything has been really well received.
I'm both super grateful for that, and I'm always terrified. Every single book, I'm like, this is the one they're not gonna like. This is it. This is the end. Every single time. Every single time.
With the fan base, you've got to figure that eventually somebody's going to be upset about something and make a big stink of it. But like you said, so far, every single thing you've written, I've eaten it up. Just absolutely.
Great.
Every bit.
I got to tell you, whenever Lost Stars came out, new canon, I've read all the not all the Legends books, not all of it, but read most of the Legends books, and Lost Stars came out. I'm like, it's a young adult novel. I don't know how I feel about it, but I'm going to read it and, see how I feel. And it is, until Master and Apprentice came out, it was my favorite book in the new canon. I absolutely loved every moment of that novel. So to the point where I don't write articles very often, but I even wrote an article about the artistry of Claudia Gray's words to the Star Wars universe. So I did. It's sad, really.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I remember before it came out, a lot of people were sort of going like, do we need young adult in Star Wars? And I was like, guys, almost all the movies are about young people striking out or taking their first big steps and being independent. It's like, the young adult's been here the whole time.
Yeah,
it really has. It really has. So I tell you what, has Star Wars, you can tell it's a large part of our life, and it's obviously a large part of your professional life. Has Star Wars always been a pretty large part of your personal life in general?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the movie came out the year that I turned 7. So I was part of that first generation of kids that went to that movie and just was blown away, and it dominated my childhood.
Right.
I mean, I don't think people who have come of age, I'm really dating myself now, but it's true. I don't think people have come of age since the death of the monoculture, since, back when there were 3 channels,
right,
4 if you looked at PBS, and you only had the national media to look at for things, and to be this movie, movies back then, because you didn't have discs or whatever, they could stay in theaters for years. Like, I don't think anybody can understand how much it dominated everything. It was all over TV. It stayed in movie theaters for a year.
Mm-hmm.
They had a poster that came out with a lot of little action figures around a cake because it had run in all these movie theaters for a year straight. It was enormous. I had a lot of posters, especially from Return of the Jedi, because then I was getting into adolescence, was getting more aggressive about the posters on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Had those up forever and ever. So yeah, had a bunch of the action figures that now would be worth a lot of money if we had not, battered them into complete submission. And just for the record, if your old style lightsaber falls out of Luke or Obi-Wan's hand, you can use your parents' cocktail toothpick.
That's what I used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That works great.
We actually did an episode on our favorite old school figures, and Scott has one of those guys. right?
yeah.
A couple of those. Scott's a real collector. Like,
Yeah, I've got all of them. So
I can't even go in his house.
We grew up, sorry, I'm really going
Go for
afield
it.
here, but I grew up very near a river, which meant every few years they were going to come and sandbag. And there was one year where there was a lot of sandbagging, and they just put these huge mounds of sand in the vacant lot that was across from our house. Huge. Anyway, and we just decided, like, well, you know, that's Tatooine. And so we'd go out there because it was left over at the end of everything. And so that was Tatooine. We'd go out there and play with the figures. And I mean, that would have been in like 1979, maybe something like that. Anyway, about 5 years ago, they finally were putting something, you know, doing something in this vacant lot, and the last little scraps of that sand were still there.
Oh my God.
I know, it was a big pile of sand, friends. Anyway, one of the workers came to my parents' house and was like, does this belong to one of your kids? And it was a little rebel ranger. He'd been out there all that time, this long tour of duty. You know, they brought him back. You know, my brother and I sort of resumed custody, and we're like, good job, buddy.
That's awesome.
That is incredible.
I'm pretty sure we all have similar type things. That's phenomenal that it's been part of your life that long, just like us, right? Because it's not just some people just have a job, right? I'm going to write books. I do whatever, but you get to be an actual, back then, the creator was George Lucas, the maker, right? But now you get to be a creator. You get to create in this sandbox. And I mean, that's just got to be an unreal feeling, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You want to go back in time and like high five your little 12-year-old self. Be like, guess what? No, that was, it was both something that I dreamed about doing and something I 0% expected to ever do.
Oh, well, we're glad you got the opportunity. All of us are. So thank you for that. How'd you get started in writing in general? Was this your calling?
I always wanted to tell stories. I was always interested in telling stories, and I really lacked the confidence to try for a very long time. You know, I went to law school, great life choices right there. You know, so now I call myself a recovering lawyer. I went into journalism for a while because where else can you pay off that law school debt than in journalism? You know?
Wow.
But I was doing all this. Then I wound up in law firm marketing, which is every bit as glamorous and exciting as you have always dreamed. But, you know, the whole time I wrote, and I got very active in fan fiction. I also was sort of like right at the age when the internet became mass, you know,
I remember
popularity.
Oh, yeah.
And that first wave, the, you know, X-Files, it was the first idea of like, oh, here's how you would do fandom online, you know. And so I was writing very, very, very bad Mulder and Scully fan fiction from that time on. But slowly the fan fiction started getting better, and I could tell it was getting better. And then I finally had my first novel length idea. I was like, oh, because I'd never been able, like, how could you even think of enough story for a book? And then it was like, I mean, I still don't have words for it other than, oh, and then things keep happening. Like, you just keep going with it. But, and once I'd written several fan novels, I was like, you know, maybe it's time to give this a shot. Maybe I ought to go after it. And at the time, I was a big fan of Buffy and Angel. I've been a big week for those people.
Yes. Yeah, I saw.
Because of that, I wrote this book that had a lot to do with teenagers and vampires, unaware that I was sending it out like in the world that the week, basically the publishing was going, this thing called Twilight seems to be selling, you know. So I got really stupidly lucky right out of the gate. In a lot of ways, I was not ready to be a published writer. There was a lot I had to learn, and I always liken it to, you know, I think a lot of people learned to swim because they had that uncle that was like, I will just throw a child in the pool.
Well, that was my
They'll
dad.
die or they'll learn to swim. And that was basically how I got published. It was like, just throw her in, let's see what happens.
That's
and
awesome.
You know, it's been a learning process. It still is a learning process. Hopefully it always will be, but that was how I got in.
Insane. That's wild. And so you always think I'm going to write a book, get it to a publisher, whatever. There's so much work, and they're going to keep telling you. We've talked about it with some other authors that, you know, I write it, then I come back, this can't work. This can't work. Do you get a lot of that in Star Wars? Do you get a whole lot from the story group being like, okay, this isn't going to work, you got to move that?
Not as much anymore, because I've learned to ask up front a lot of things. With Lost Stars, there wasn't that much, because it was like set it up against the events of the original trilogy, but those had been canon for decades. So there were only very minor things. Like I had Darth Vader's flagship somewhere it wasn't supposed to be at one point. They're like, that ship isn't there. And I was like, it's an imaginary ship that only exists in our minds. They're like, it's somewhere else. And I was like, oh, okay. That was sort of the first thing. And then Bloodline was much more complicated, because it bounced off things in The Force Awakens, which I had not seen and had not been given the script to. And they had told me a couple of things that I needed to know, but they were very minor. Like when I went to the movie, I didn't even know Rey was the main character. Like that,
Really?
very little.
Wow.
And so sometimes I'd have something in Bloodline and be like, that doesn't work, and we can't tell you why. And I'd edit it and come back, and they'd be like, warmer, and
Jeez.
yeah. And so that was a thing. So now, like right up at the front, like I remember with Master and Apprentice, I was asking right off the bat, like, can I use the huts? Yes or no? Can I do this? Can I touch on that, etc. To get some broader parameters, just because I don't know everything else that's going on.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I mean, this was a very minor thing, but Leia's droid, Tuvi in Princess of Alderaan, originally I named this droid K2. And they're like, it can't be called K2. I was like, okay. And so I changed it, Rogue One came out like right then. I was like, oh, okay. So I changed it to what I thought was a lot better, which was L3. And then they were like, no. So that was minor, of course. That was very easy to
But
just finally
what guesses, right? Like nailed it.
Yeah, apparently I'm not the only one who thinks those sound good as names, but there are things, but I've gotten a lot better at kind of going, where am I allowed to go? What's going on? And getting that away up front before I even have a totally solid plot line thought up in my head. It's like, okay, we can go, like with Master and Apprentice, they're like, we don't want a whole huts thing, but you can touch on the huts. So we touch on the huts.
Right. So you mentioned Leia, Princess of Alderaan. I'll get back on track here. Did you know anything about Holdo at that point? Did you know what she was going to do?
They let me read the whole Last Jedi script almost a year before that movie came out.
Whoa.
Wow.
Totally different. I was out in California and they're like, sure, go ahead. I mean, I had to show ID and go into a room and the pages were read, so it wouldn't photograph very well. Not that I tried, I just know that's why the pages were read.
Right.
But had a blast reading it. It was so fun, and actually was a little bit miffed afterward. I was like, I don't know that I needed to read that. I'm kind of like the surprises, but that way I got to enjoy Snoke dying twice. The first time. I seriously wish somebody had a picture of my face when I read that script. I was like,
I bet. Yeah, a year ahead of time. That's awesome. Yeah. I tell everybody when Last Jedi came out and there was just a little bit, I'll just talk about the backlash on that piece, right, on Holdo. I'm all, that's because you guys haven't read. You guys aren't reading. I said, because honestly, Holdo, I understand her character completely. I think she's a great
I loved her. She was fun.
Yeah, and she is different, and she's that different attitude, and I loved it. So I again, tend to, the books enhance what we see on screen, and when people get that, it's so much better, I think. So, all right, well, thank you for that piece. I may take you off track there.
All right.
So dig it. So with this, and I asked about like the Star Wars stories and everything. Do you have a huge library of like visual dictionaries and stuff? What do you use as reference for your books?
Well, I still have a lot of my old Legends books. I had not all, but so many of them until I went to graduate school in the 1990s, late 1990s, right around, 99, I think. And then I fell behind and couldn't quite keep up, but I still had, a ton of them. And I do have a bunch of visual dictionaries, and that is one of the big joys, having that to draw upon, because when you've literally had some of the world's greatest designers, monster makers, model makers, painters, etc., working on this stuff, for decades, you have an incredibly rich well to draw from.
Oh, For sure, for sure. And then you know what? And in 20 years, when I'm still reading Star Wars stuff, they're still going to point back now to your stuff and be like the same thing. And it's great well of information because you add quite a bit to the lore yourself. So that's great.
I'm grateful for all the other lore that's out there, and I've tried to draw some on other books, even not from High Republic. You know, I've had I was able to do some stuff from Tarkin by is it James Luceno?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got some of that in there. I did use do you say it's Sabak or Sabak?
I say Sabak.
Yeah.
Sabak. Don't even know. I know you spell it. That's what I have to know, not how you say it. How you spell it. I use the same rules for that in Bloodline that were in the original Han Solo trilogy by A.C. Crispin back in the day.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I try to interweave stuff.
I noticed that. And I actually feel like Into the Dark, there's a lot of comments in there that I feel, I could be wrong, but I feel like you're talking to us, to the readers, right? I actually literally hear, I'm like, she's talking to me, like specifically when specifically one of the lines saying how there's always truth in legends when it's telling a story. I swear that's to the book readers that are complaining about canon.
Yeah.
I swear that's to me. Was that?
Yeah, totally.
Totally. Yay. All right. Yeah, I can comprehend stuff sometimes.
Well, you only listen to it 6 times. So I mean,
yeah.
you know.
Well, I'm on the 3rd go of Into the Dark. I'm not mastering apprentice. I like these. You know, Claudia, I tell them, everybody, I'd rather have Mark Thompson's voice in my head or some other narrators in my own. So I spend a lot of time with my free time, if I'm doing chores and stuff, with your guys' books in my head. I love it. I love the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, the Star Wars audiobooks are in a completely different league in terms of the sound effects and the music and the production quality. It's unreal.
100%. The narrator on Into the Dark did a great job.
He's got the same tone in his voice. It reminds me of Casey Kasem. He's got that same. It just I want him to, you know, tell me to keep reaching for the stars there. He's got a great.
Is it and now back to the countdown, Casey, or is it Shaggy?
It's definitely now back to the countdown, Casey. It is. Absolutely.
Thank goodness.
Yes.
Right.
Zoinks.
Zoinks. All right. So now the big thing right now, as we mentioned, Into the Dark, okay, the High Republican Journal, and you're right now, currently at this moment, the #1 top selling was a hardcover, young adult.
Yes.
At this moment. So that's just wild to me. So that's insane.
I've been trying for 2 weeks to get a hard copy of your book, and my Barnes and Noble cannot keep it in stock. So I finally broke down and ordered it online just because I need a copy of it.
I'm assuming you've already ordered it, but, and I like saying this, if you want a signed copy, if you order from Octavia Books in New Orleans, I sign all the copies they have to go out. So you want a signed copy of any of my work, anybody out there, it's Octavia Books in New Orleans. So
writing it down
so you know that.
And we will tell everybody.
Yeah, and once we have, like, you know, hopefully someday there will be High Republic books that have, I don't know, maybe there'll be art books or some stuff like that. Daniel Jose Older lives about a whopping 10-minute drive from my house. We both have the same bookstore, so we can both sign that kind of stuff.
That is insane. So
yeah, especially right now when we don't have cons to go to. If you do want multiple High Republic authors on something, Octavia Books is where you start. So
right on. Well,
we'll
start there. We sure will.
Yeah.
All right. So now again, we've mentioned, you know, the High Republic, and you're one of 5 authors as the architects, right? Mm-hmm. There's an unknown gap in our Star Wars knowledge that you get to fill. Can you talk about that process on your end, just the High Republic and Into the Dark, from as opposed to, like, say, your other works, right, like Master and Apprentice and stuff, where you're solo in this big group?
Let's see. It began. I mean, Mike Siglain, who's sort of the head of Stars Publishing. He had mentioned as far back as 2015 that he wanted to do some kind of multi-platform publishing story arc, and I was like, cool idea. You know, so I knew that eventually this would happen, but when? And I guess really was it, sorry, time is all flowing together. I guess it was really 2018 when things really began to roll. And like Daniel and I found out we were each involved before we knew anything else about how it would go. I remember we met up one time, it was right after he moved down here, and we were like, so what is this going to be? We don't have any idea. Anyway, and then we got to go to Skywalker Ranch, which is awesome.
Unbelievable.
I can't
Like
imagine.
I expected it to be awesome, and then I liked it even more. I was like, oh, come on. But we got to go there and sort of have this first big story meeting where we just threw out ideas about what we love about Star Wars and what narratives we might have. And each of us sort of came with a narrative, and we had said it in different time periods and different stuff. You know, it was all over the place, but it was just sort of like, what story ideas do we kind of want to pursue right off the bat? And the concept of the High Republic wasn't any one of our individual ideas. I think that was sort of where Mike realized, like, this is where we have the most room to really tell a story that goes out on its own and does this. And so we picked a narrative, and we started building on that all together, and characters began to appear, and we all pitched different individual characters to be part of the entire story. And while I think all of us started off principally writing people we invented, none of us only wrote people we invented, you know. And as we keep going, we're working with each other's creations even more. Is that an explanation? I think it is.
That's a pretty awesome explanation on my end. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So we're good there.
Yeah, we got to go back to Skywalker Ranch a second time, which was also
Was that for the show, or was that?
No, that was for the second time where we sort of like, okay, we know it's going to be the High Republic, and we started breaking it out more from there. And we did, like, now it feels like, you know, in another lifetime, but it was almost just over a year ago. We went out to do sort of the announcement thing, but we didn't go to Skywalker Ranch for that, just to Disney.
Gotcha. Just at Disney, you know.
Those people.
Right. So now this is another thing that we've kind of talked about on the show, that the time frame, since you guys said you kind of spitballed it and figured out what everything was going on. 200 years obviously puts Yoda in there, right? We get to see bits of Yoda. I kind of discussed how I felt like this was a good time frame because Yoda is an anchor, right?
Yeah.
To what we know, as opposed to going straight Old Republic, which you guys reference all the time. Right.
And which, by the way, I've already made it clear, if there's ever to be a young adult novel about how Mission and Zalbar met, and I'm not writing it, there will be blood.
Awesome.
There will be blood. That one is mine, by God.
She's called Dibs.
Yeah.
Dibs.
Love it.
Yeah.
So that was an awesome thing. So was that ever discussed, like the time frame and having an anchor like that, like a Yoda there? So just because I feel like as ridiculous fans, like overboard fans, we would be okay wherever it went. It could have went 2,000 years before, would have been cool. But I think the casual fan that's just reading a book would get kind of lost without somebody.
We wanted to have some things to draw upon, not just Yoda, although obviously Yoda, but you want to feel like, okay, ships will be different, but maybe not so radically different that we would feel the need to go to art and be like, you have to make up an entirely different reason for being for all of this stuff.
Right.
You know, something where it could be similar enough that it would feel familiar and we'd have a really strong visual sense for it, but, you know, still far enough that we had the liberty to do our own thing.
Very cool. No, it's working out really well. So who do you get to play with? What characters do you have in Into the Dark?
See, we've got the main characters, Reef Silas, Padawan, who would really rather kind of be in the archives because, as I said in the book, nobody gives these babies personality tests before they take them. There's you definitely want to be an adventurer, don't you? And as much as I love reading about adventure, watching adventure, thinking about adventure, you know, I'm like self-knowledge. I know, like, I'm probably more in the Reef camp. It's like, I love to know what you guys have done. That is great. That's so great.
that's Scott and I. That's exactly why I had trouble after the Light of the Jedi and everything else that everybody put out, picking a favorite Jedi. I'm probably, you know, my first 7 or 8 chapters, I'm messaging Scott and the guys and saying, you know what, I found him. Reef is my favorite Jedi. Because he's me again. Yeah, sure, I could do a lot, but I don't want to. I want to sit in my archive. I want to read. I want more knowledge. I want that. That's I want to be there.
Honestly, he came from the idea of like sort of a male Hermione Granger because, you know, loves to read, loves to do the research, knows the history, knows all that. That's their strongest suit. But when everything goes down, who do you actually want right beside you? Yeah, you want Hermione, or in this case, Reef is totally able to be there, and his master even sees in him like he has some strengths he doesn't even fully recognize that are going to serve the order well, But
and he's different than everybody else, and that's what's cool, right? And almost all the Jedi are they're so different. That's why this is a really wild ride, right? We haven't seen things like this before.
And it's an era when the Jedi can be a little more different. It's not quite as is dogmatic the word that I want. There's not sort of one path you follow as a Jedi. It's not quite as centralized. It's not quite as hierarchical. They're Jedi who have different opinions about the best way to connect to the Force, to channel your energies, the path you ought to be on. And that's all right.
Yeah. No, we had that discussion too, how wild it is that they all have this different view. And then when you see them in say prequel era, it's kind of, like you said, dogmatic, kind of Yoda's vision now at this point, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's everybody. But when you get to 200 and some years later, it's so we're assuming something's going to happen. He's like, nope.
Yeah. Yoda's, it seems like, has sort of fallen into a pattern of this, whereas clearly by the time of The Empire Strikes Back, he's really transcended all that. He's learned from a lot of what happened, but right in the prequel era, I mean, the whole point of The Phantom Menace is everything was perfect, but something has gone wrong.
Right.
And the whole prequel trilogy is just tracing the cracks to go, oh, it touches everything. It touches everything.
Just kind of makes it feel like we're building up to something that will drive the Jedi away from this open-mindedness to this narrow-minded, dogmatic ways that they've got. I feel like it's coming. I don't know if it's going to be in one of your novels that's set in the High Republic, or if it's going to be the Acolyte, which they're talking about being near the end of the High Republic. I'm just.
She's all. Shush, Scott.
We can't talk about things.
Shush, Scott. How about this? There's another character in here that I think is going to be a fan favorite for people. Geode.
Yes.
Let's talk about Geode for a minute. Where did that come from? Where did Geode come from?
I have to be honest. My boyfriend thought of that, not me. Leox came first. Leox Ajasi, the captain of the vessel, who I greatly enjoy writing. It sort of wound up being like Matthew McConaughey meets the dude.
Yes.
Yes, he was.
Yes.
Kind of who he is. And I knew that I didn't want his navigator, his sort of partner in crime, to be somebody who spoke a whole lot, because Leox has his own way of speaking and it has a definite flavor to it and it can go on for a while. And I wanted to let him do that because it's a good voice and I wanted to play with it. But I was like, well, at the same time, you can't have like a non-talking, you can't just make it Chewbacca. You can't have diet Chewbacca as the person. And I was like, what do I do there? And my boyfriend was, I think only half serious, was like, what if it's a rock? And I was like, oh. Of course, he's not a rock. He's a Ventian, but it's very difficult to tell a Ventian from a rock unless you are a Ventian or a rock.
So I think every time somebody speaks of or to Geode, I just, every time I feel like it's tongue in cheek, but serious, but so awesome. Like every time I giggle, I'm excited by it. I'm like, this is awesome. I need Geode.
I'm so glad, because I enjoy Geode so much. I was like, oh dear God, I hope other people love this, or else they're just going to be like, what is this crazy woman doing? But
yeah, I think at first we're kind of like, what's this crazy woman doing?
Yes.
Eventually we're like, wow, this is so great. When they explain his name, how nobody else can say it.
Like, yeah, you can't say it correctly unless you don't have a mouth.
Right. I mean, it makes you go, I can't even headcanon it. It works. It works.
Yeah, it works. I'm glad.
Like I said, everything you say tends to work for us. We don't have to go around headcanoning it, and that's fairly rare in Star Wars storytelling. You even fix a couple of things, if I'm going to be quite honest here. Again, Last Jedi bringing up, there was a little beef about Leia in space. You make quite clear in this book, Reith has done some research, and it's okay for a few minutes. Was that intentional?
Yes. Actually, that came less from The Last Jedi and more one of my original series, Defy the Stars. It's a book set like 500 years in the future, and Earth has some colony worlds, and it's right at the point where the colony worlds are beginning to go, maybe Earth could just back off. Maybe we don't need this anymore. And I had a sequence in that where an android is exposed to space for a while. So I wound up doing some research. It's sort of going from like, okay, human can take X, but so what could Abel, which was the name of that android, what could he take? So by the time I was getting into Leia, Princess of Alderaan, I already knew, like, in The Last Jedi, I was like, yeah, you'd have about that long. It would suck, but you'd have it.
Right. It would probably put you down for a while and incapacitate you for a minute, but you'd survive it.
As indeed it did. Yeah.
Indeed it
It would suck a lot, but you have to know to exhale hard, don't breathe in.
That's the key, right? So I just love that you touch it, because every time something happens like that in a book, I'm like, somebody read this book. There it is right there. There's the quote I needed. And it fixes the entire galaxy. And that's so, being a creator, that's the power you have, where something's mad somewhere, something didn't quite hit, and you get to fix it and tie it up.
I can tell you the single most self-indulgent thing I've fixed.
Oh, please.
As part of this trip back a year ago, for work, they're like, you must come to Galaxy's Edge.
Oh no.
It's like, oh, what a work day it is. They're going to go see the Millennium Falcon, and it was great. And it was awesome. And even though, it's February, this will not surprise you Californians, it was like 85 degrees or something that day. And we're going around and everybody was like, God, I'd love some ice cream. And most of Disney, had set out like literally the step where you're like, God, I'd love some ice cream. You look and there's an ice cream parlor like right there. They know sort of to the inch exactly where people are going to be when they want these things. Like,
when they want it.
And our guide was like, oh, I'm sorry, there isn't any Galaxy's Edge. There's no ice cream in Star Wars. And I was like, well then, and
hold my beer.
Yeah, and it's in Into the Dark. So my great hope is that when the parks are fully reopened and we can return, you can have a little ice cream now, because I wanted some. That's probably not a good reason to do it, but so it is.
I think that's
feel
awesome.
Like generations of hot tourists will thank me.
They will. Yeah. See, being a creator, and you can do what you want and put your self-indulgent pieces in there and share it with the Sarlacc Digest. Who knew? That was awesome. Awesome. I know we're getting short on time. I'm sorry. And thank you for being patient with us, Claudia.
Oh, no. Thank you guys.
Right on. The last thing, questions I had here, how about now? Any characters you've fallen in love with? Absolutely. Whether you created him or not in the High Republic, like you're just like, wow, I didn't think that Jedi was going to be what it's become so far. And it's early on.
Oh gosh. I really love the entire crew of the vessel, Leox and Geode and Affy, who I really feel like is sort of the emotional note that ties the little trio together. I really enjoy writing them, which is weird because it's such a Jedi focused initiative in so many ways,
right?
That it's kind of odd that I'm most taken with kind of writing non-Jedi, but then again, maybe that's, the perversity of the imagination, I guess. But I do enjoy Reef and Comac. I love Skier. I love Buriaga. I love Bell, Zedifer, and Ember.
It's so hard, right? There's so many good characters now.
There's so many. I love Orla. I love Avar. And now I can't really get into things because there are characters that you may not at this point think are major characters who may be major characters that I also love, and I'm just gonna leave that right there.
That's fair. Right. We love that. All right.
So I've found myself really the Drengir. What a fascinating villain. Essentially evil salad coming to eat you. It's what a unique take. I really enjoyed that. And Marchion Ro, I wasn't too sold on him at the beginning of Into the Light of the Jedi, but now every time he speaks, and he's captivating. So
actually, right there. How do you say it, Claudia?
We actually had a conversation on the Slack about this. It turned out all 5 of us were saying it differently. I believe we've gone with Marchion Ro.
Okay.
Maybe. Yeah. I'm not. I may have forgotten that. Whatever the audiobook says.
Well, see, the audiobook says Marchion, but we heard all the creators saying Marchion. We're like, well, the creators are the creators, so we got to go with that.
Also, why after the Ransom Casterfo debacle, I now turn in a pronunciation guide to names with all of my books.
I bet, yeah. Oh, you know what? That was a good link too, by the way. We had gone through and the Amaxine link from Bloodline to here. Amazing. Again, that's the kind of stuff we love, and that's the kind of things that get us all hyped up. And we're like, oh my God, I can't believe they just connected that to that to that. And then to know, Rise of Kylo Ren and Charles Soule's comic too. Like the connections through you guys all work out.
Yes. Yes, and that's really fun being able to do that.
I bet that's the coolest part about working with a team on it too, is like, hey, I'm gonna throw this in.
Totally. That's the best part, is sort of being able to strike ideas off each other and check on each other with things. And also, like, really, I think especially during this lockdown, your writing tends to be pretty solitary. And I'm probably one of the only people whose job became less solitary with lockdown, because we came onto the Slack a little more, and our conference calls sort of became a little bit more of a big point in the week. So, and we talk to each other about our other projects that don't have anything to do with Star Wars.
Right on. Well, you became friends and partners and everything. I'm sure it's changed. That's.
I made Daniel's birthday cake this year.
Stop it.
Oh,
I did.
I tell you what, I could imagine, because so far we are 3 for 3 on awesome people. So I can imagine that everybody in there has to be awesome, and this conversations must be great. So
we've had a really great time.
Very cool. Now, what we're going to do, and what we like to do with our guests, is play a quick round of questions. Okay. We'll get you out of here. Scott and I'll go back and forth across. I'll start off, and then Scott will go to the next one. But they're just basic Star Wars questions to get you through. But before we get that, if you don't mind, can I ask you one question? Because you are the only person to tackle this, really. Jedi celibacy. You've done it twice, right?
I have tackled it, haven't I?
You have, and nobody else does. I think it's amazing. Why are we like Rail? We'll just go with Rail, so it doesn't spoil anything, right?
Yeah.
What was the? Why do we do that? Why did you go ahead and tackle that?
I've never seen that as accomplishing what we're told it's supposed to accomplish, and and the fact that Rail isn't celibate, I think, doesn't get to the point quite as much as that thing that he says with Qui-Gon. He's like, we care about our masters. We care about our apprentices. We have friendships. Like, you can't be a functioning, person and not have some kind of attachment somewhere. So you have this rule that's supposed to prevent attachment, but doesn't, but in some ways just cuts off avenues of healthy attachment.
Right.
And also back in this era, the High Republic era, it is less dogmatic, and you may see a slightly wider range of interpretations. This, I was joking about it with some other interviewer earlier, we're kind of going to Pirates of the Caribbean area. It's like, they're more like guidelines.
More like guidelines.
More like guidelines. So yeah, that sort of, I wanted to touch on it in the first place just because I kind of don't see it as accomplishing what it's supposed to accomplish. And here there was sort of the extra reason of, okay, this is the past, they do things differently here.
Right. And it made perfect sense in both of them. Both books. I was like, oh yeah, she gets it. And that's you almost feel like it's anti-productive, right? Like it's doing the wrong thing. And that's kind of the feeling I got too. And thank you for answering that. I would be remiss if I didn't ask, since you're the only one that tackles it. I had to ask. So, right on. So now we're going to go into the questions, Claudia. And I'm going to start here. Of all the films, what is your favorite Star Wars film?
It's got to be Empire. I mean, doesn't pretty much everybody say Empire?
Everybody says Empire.
It's
so
the best answer.
So. It's the only answer. It's both of our answers.
Yes, so it is.
All right. How about non-Star Wars? What's your favorite film if you're not watching Star Wars?
Oh God, that's like, what's your favorite oxygen? What do you like breathing? Gosh, I mean, my all-time list would be a really eclectic list. It would have everything on it from Brief Encounter to Star Trek to The Wrath of Khan to the Poseidon Adventure to Sense and Sensibility, Lawrence of Arabia. There's a lot. There's a lot on that list.
You're really like a connoisseur then. You're all over.
Oh yeah. I tend to like stories, and if they're well told, like, bring it here.
Right on. Hey, how about your favorite movie character, Star Wars character?
Oh gosh, I mean, I pretty much have to go with Princess Leia. I love a whole lot of them, though.
I kind of get that feeling. You, Scott, from Bloodline and Leia. I think that was. I kind of figured that was going to be it, because I felt a love for.
Oh yeah,
Leia.
I mean, she's too central to my whole life for that not to be the answer.
Scott, sorry.
Oh, do I get to ask one now?
Sorry, man, I get
Jeez,
excited.
Chris.
I
I
get
know, I don't
excited.
blame you. And you said Star Trek too. I completely, that movie messed me up as a kid. Yeah,
It's a
seeing it in the
great
theaters.
movie.
You're about to both get kicked off the show.
Well, seriously, though, like, I'm just going to say this. I suppose you can edit this out, but I think it's worth saying. Like, death in movies, it gets undone so many times now in genre films that it comes close to having nothing.
Yeah.
Star Trek 2, even though you know that eventually Spock returns, it still feels real.
Yeah.
It
Like,
hits you right in the gut.
It hits it. It really, really earns that emotion in a way that even some non-reverse genre deaths don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question. Do you prefer prequels, the original movies, or the sequels? Do you have a preference, or the whole thing?
The original trilogy, because it's so foundational to me. You know, there are things I enjoy in every trilogy. There are things I enjoy in every movie. You know, but you know, the original one is just too central to, again, not just my fan experience, but kind of my life.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have this ongoing question. It's a running joke between Chris and myself here.
Okay.
All right, and we ask this of all of our guests: The Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones, and why? Which one do you prefer? No, which one do you prefer?
I prefer the Phantom Menace for two reasons. One, we did not have the Anakin Padme romance in that, which was not well done, and it makes me angry. One, because I'm a big believer in romance as a storytelling device, and I feel like you had so many people who were like, when they heard Lost Stars were coming out, they were angry. They're like, we don't need romance in Star Wars, you know. And I would guarantee you 99.9% of those people, if I said, do you love Han and Leia? They'd be like, yeah. You know. It was Anakin and Padme that had to go, ugh. And it mattered so much because this was pre-Clone Wars, and that was the only thing that you were given to really invest in Anakin, because we know, I mean, that poster behind you, you know, you got the little boy Anakin and there's the shadow, you know.
Yep.
You know he's going to be Darth Vader. You know all this stuff is going to happen. You have to invest in him emotionally. And if you only have the romantic storyline was really what we were given to do that with, and it didn't work. And it was like, ugh, that's a bad fail. Like, it's not just bad, like, we really needed that to come through, you know. Whereas then you get to the Clone Wars and you get this Anakin who is layered and, you know, can be heroic and arrogant, and you know, is a great mentor and is incredibly short-tempered, and you actually have the time and space to get in there and go there with it. The other reason that I like the Phantom Menace so much, well, there are a couple things. You know, I love the Duel of the Fates, of course, everything about it. But the main thing is Qui-Gon is in it. And he's been one of my favorite characters from that moment on. And his presence in that movie really makes it, makes me love that.
That was such a great answer. And I think if Scott would have done that on a debate, I still would have won, but I would have given some more away. We actually have an episode we haven't put out yet where he and I argue for 40 minutes over why it's great or horrible. But yeah. So well done. I am the only person so far to say Attack of the Clones is Daniel.
Yeah.
Everybody else picks Last Shot. Everybody.
The Phantom Menace, you mean?
I'm Phantom Menace. Sorry.
Yeah.
I say, I don't know why I'm doing.
Yeah,
all right. So how about this? Go ahead.
I don't know that the bad stuff in Attack of the Clones is worse than the bad stuff in the Phantom Menace, but the Phantom Menace had these really great moments that I kind of felt like Attack of the Clones did not deliver as much.
It tried.
It tried. There were moments.
Like, yeah.
There are times I think if Dooku's name just wasn't Dooku, he would be one of the most popular characters. Yeah. But his name is Dooku.
Yeah.
Right.
Like Christopher Lee's bringing it. He's awesome.
I think so too. But you know what? We didn't love Dooku until Dooku Jedi Lost, that went along with Master and Apprentice, really, right?
Yeah, Kevin and I were able to work together on that, which was great.
So
yeah,
cool.
that changed my whole opinion on Dooku too. But that's why books are great, kids.
Yes.
All right. How about any favorite scene that really sticks in your mind from any Star Wars? Like when you think Star Wars, what do you think?
I love the Duel of the Fates. gosh, it seemed to now all the scenes that are coming to mind are death scenes, which is like, oh, I don't know what that says about me. I think Han Solo's death scene is freaking amazing, and the character journey from Better Her Than Me to that moment where he has a mortal wound and he still touches his son's face, like that's a beautiful, beautiful thing to me. That's amazing.
You just gave me chills.
I got goosebumps. Yeah.
I think Luke Skywalker dies like an ultimate badass.
Mm-hmm.
That was bad ass. I'm sorry, my eloquence has deserted me, but that's just because it's badass. And honestly, I'm just going through death scenes here. I would honestly say like one of the great death scenes is Ben Kenobi's, because Alec Guinness, I mean, we've had a lot of really great performances in Star Wars. Alec Guinness is up on this other level where only a handful of just film actors have ever been. And I have a theory that one of the marks of a truly great actor is the ability to create ambiguity, to like have a scene, a moment, a reaction mean a lot of things. And given the script for A New Hope that he was given, you could imagine a whole lot of actors, even good actors, would have been like, what is this? You know, whereas Alec Guinness digs deep and gives you these moments. And when you look at it now, you know, at this moment, and you watch Ben Kenobi and he looks over and you know he's seeing Luke and Leia together for the first time since they were infants. And the thing is, you know, also the minute he saw that hollow of Leia, he knew this is it. Like I've been waiting for 20 years and now it's my time to act. And he's had to be like the crazy man in the desert for all that time, you know, isolated, whatever. And he's done it. He's actually done it. He's brought them back together. Things are, you know, everything is about to change. You can see it in Alec Guinness now because Alec Guinness gave that moment that ambiguity. He didn't try to just be like, oh, Luke's going to make it out. Okay. You know, he gave it this moment. You know, obviously he didn't have that backstory. You know, I don't think there's anybody left who honestly thinks George Lucas had all of that written out exactly that way, you know, from the beginning. But he gave it a moment of ambiguity. Like, you don't have to know everything in this man's past. This man had a past.
Right.
It's interesting. And I think the fact that he gave it that and you can see that weight in it now, I think is amazing. I'm sorry I went on some length about that.
No, that was
made me excited to. I need to go watch the original trilogy now.
that was pretty eloquent there.
Yeah,
that was deep.
Beautiful.
I love it. I love it. How deep you can get on Star Wars, right? And people don't get that. It's like it's deep stuff and important stuff. And
yeah,
well done. I'll tell you what. I'm not going to go any questions because that was the answer from all answers. That was great.
Okay, all right.
So how about this? We talked about House of L. What else do you got in the works? Anything else we should be on the lookout for outside of Star Wars or in Star Wars?
I could say I'm working on something else with Star Wars that is High Republic related. I can't say what it is yet.
Cool.
I am. I just finished. House of L is a trilogy, actually. I just finished work on the third book. Now that the first book is out, art is underway on the second book. Graphic novels being a whole different beast in terms of the timeline, and I am about to go back into edits on my first original work for adults, which is a murder mystery. It is called The Murder of Mr. Wickham. It is a Jane Austen, Agatha Christie mashup. And it ought to be out sometime in 2022.
Fantastic.
All right.
Well, we're going to be on the lookout for that. We'll tell our folks, and I know we'll jump in.
Okay, fantastic.
Awesome. So again, we thank you for your time, Claudia. Scott, do you have anything here to kick off?
No, just thank you so much for coming in and taking some time with us.
Oh, thank you guys. This has been fun.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to hear it. So tell your friends, Claudia. We're okay. Right on. But to everybody listening or watching, thank you very much. We'll be back to you again. Remember, weekly now on the Sarlacc Digest on YouTube at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So catch us there every week. And whatever spin-offs Scott and I do on Hot Topic and toy reviews, game reviews, whatever else we have on the channel. So check that out. So until next time,
keep it nerdy.
And thank you, Claudia Gray. You have made our day.
Thank you, guys.
Right on.
This is Grand Admiral Thrawn. You are listening to the Sarlacc Digest. What a fascinating play on words.